Welcome to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Hello, Heisman.
Chuck Conrad with a kickoff. Going up a strong leg, end over end. Sanders takes it 1 yard deep in the end zone. Up the middle, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. He's at the 40. He's at 45, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 50, 10, 5. Touchdown, Cowboys. Just like last year, a same story.
And the winner is...
Here's your host, Chris Houston.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the official Heisman Trophy podcast. We appreciate you for joining us today. I'm really excited about this week's show because I have a special connection to both of the guests. As a veteran of the United States Navy, it was really fun to have a chance to talk to Navy quarterback Blake Horvath. He's going to kick things off for us to start the show. But coming up after that, a long, in-depth interview with 2002 Heisman Trophy winner out of USC, Carson Palmer. And this is a unique situation for me as a podcast host and interviewer because I ran Carson Palmer's Heisman Trophy campaign back when I worked at USC in the early 2000s. Being involved in the granular marketing details of that campaign and studying the Heisman electorate really served to stoke my interest in the Heisman Trophy. And a little later, I started the blog HeismanPundit.com, which was one of the first college football blogs, and of course that got me started on my career in media covering the Heisman Trophy. So we've got Carson to blame for all that, and I think if you're a USC fan in particular, you're going to really enjoy the level of detail that we get into when talking about late 90s, early 2000s USC football. Let's go right away to our first guest, Navy quarterback Blake Horvath, a junior, 6'2", 195 pounds. He's out of Hilliard, Ohio. And right now, he has led the midshipmen to a 5-0 record, their best start since 2017. And Horvath has pretty much been unstoppable to this point, averaging 267 yards of total offense per game with 17 touchdowns rushing and passing. He has a passer rating of 211.63, and he's averaging almost 9 yards per carry. Truly one of the great surprises of the college football season so far. We caught up with Blake early Monday morning, and here's how it went.
This is Carson Palmer, 2002 Heisman Trophy winner, and you are listening to the official Heisman podcast.
Blake Horvath, welcome to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Navy is off to its best start since 2017 at 5-0, and you guys are fresh off a 34-7 victory over Air Force on the road, your first win over the Falcons in Colorado Springs since 2012. Congrats on that big win. With a couple days now to process things, tell me about your mindset and your team's mindset as you head into your bye week. Yeah,
I think we're really geared up for Air Force and just excited for the opportunity to, go out to Colorado Springs and get our first victory since 2012. And, our seniors on our team hadn't beat them yet. So I think it was just a big, mindset thing and, preparing for them and going into it knowing that, you throw the records out the window with any academy games because the best team may not always win, the team with the best record. And so I think we went in there, just really had a gritty win. And, now we're feeling the effects of the game, obviously. But, I think we're excited for the bye week to sort of recuperate and get ready for Charlotte.
That was your first game against a Service Academy team. Was that extra special for you? Were you really pumped up for that one?
Oh, I was super excited. It was just, not trying to make the moment too big. It's just like any other game and just being thankful to even be out there. I'm blessed to, even have the opportunity to be playing college football. And so I try and think about that before every game and not try and get too anxious or worked up about the whole thing.
Navy was picked to finish 11th out of 14 teams in the preseason AAC media poll. And you're now 3-0 in conference with a victory over the preseason league favorite, Memphis. Are you surprised by this great start? And when did you have an inkling that this team could be special?
Yeah, I don't think I'm surprised at all. I think we knew what we had, and I think it really started in spring ball when when Coach Cronic came in and installed his offense. And, we have a pretty good defense that, gives us some tough looks, especially in practice. And so when we were executing our plays against them and, hitting big plays, I thought, I was like, man, this feels different than it has in the past. And, I don't blame, we don't have any animosity towards the people that ranked us 11th. We hadn't done anything to prove that we were better than that the past few seasons. So, we came in knowing what we can do and trying to prove them wrong. But, preseason wise, they were going off what we've done in the past, which, just wasn't enough to meet our standards. So I think we're really excited to be proving those guys wrong.
Yeah, and your production as a first-year starter is pretty remarkable. You did start a game against North Texas last year, hurt your thumb, and you were out for the rest of the year. So not a lot of people predicted this level of performance so far. Yeah, is this something that you expected, or are you just kind of pleasantly surprised at how everything's going?
A little bit of both, honestly. Just, I think this is just expected. I'm not doing anything outside of myself, trying to be a superhero in any way. I'm just, playing football, having fun. And, our team, our offensive line, our receivers, running backs, everybody's blocking their butts off and just making plays. And so it makes my job easy as a quarterback to do things when, I can throw a screen pass and our offensive lineman can pancake some guy and then we take it 70 yards for a touchdown. So I think, with everything that's happened in the past with my injuries and stuff, I know a lot of people were uncertain about me coming into the year, but, I feel like I was always confident in what I could do.
You grew up just outside Columbus, Ohio, in a town called Hilliard. Can you share how you first got involved in football and what inspired you to pursue the quarterback position specifically?
Yeah. So I've played football, I think, since I was 4 years old, flag football, starting that young. And I've just loved it ever since, loved watching it, spending time with my family. My entire family sort of comes together for football season, with Columbus being a huge college football town with Ohio State. I would be on Ohio State's campus every weekend for the games with my parents tailgating and that. And so I think, really it started then. And then when I got into like peewee football, like tackle football, one of my coaches just said, "Hey, you're going to play quarterback." And honestly, ever since then, that's just what I've played. And so, thanks to my coach, Jerome Ross, for putting me there at quarterback back when I was, 6, 7 years old. Because who knows what I'd be doing now if he didn't do that.
So you've been a quarterback ever since you were 6 or 7.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Well, you played in an option offense in high school, and as a result, you were overlooked by a lot of schools, which is unfortunate because I feel like the recruiting services don't really look at where guys might fit. They just look at, they kind of fit things according to their criteria. What was your recruiting process like, and how did it lead you to Navy?
Yeah, it was definitely frustrating from the standpoint of COVID. That sort of slowed everything down with the extra years it gave people, and the transfer portal sort of opening up more schools to going and finding a guy that's already in college rather than taking their chance on a high school recruit. So most of my Division I action was preferred walk-ons to MAC schools, and maybe if a coach moved, I know one of the coaches that had offered me from like Ball State moved to Duke, so I had preferred walk-on there, but it was mostly just Division II schools within Columbus and or around Columbus, who some of them weren't even looking at me for quarterback, just due to the nature of playing option football and just your athleticism being on display, but not really your quarterback skills. So when Navy came along, honestly, the end of my senior season, I was still looking around, and Coach Volker, our defensive coordinator now, came and visited me, and it was a hit from there. And I loved the academy, and I knew it'd be a great fit for me. And so,
for those out there unfamiliar with academy life, what's life like as a plebe?
As a plebe, it's definitely tough. It's just a different way of going about things, and being not treated, but it's your first time sort of being in a backseat role. All these people that come to the academy are successful people from high school, and they're not used to just being the follower. Everyone wants to be the leader. And so, you have to sort of take a step back and realize your place at the academy, and, realize that everyone before you has gone through all the stuff that you're going through, whether it was plebe summer. That's sort of like, it's not the best way to describe it to people is boot camp, but it's not really boot camp. It's just, physically straining and mentally straining. And so it's a great experience when you look back on it, but when you're in it, it's tough.
Yeah, it's like when you're going through it, you're like, why am I doing this? And then you appreciate it later on, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Every summer, the midshipmen, you guys do a summer cruise. What have those experiences been like for you?
It was awesome this past summer. I actually went to Rota, Spain, and Gaeta, Italy, on the Mount Whitney out there. And so it was awesome getting to just spend time with the people on the ship and getting to know what their lives are like. And then obviously getting to spend some time in the cities that we were in Europe. And so that was awesome. And I got to go out there with, I think, 9 other midshipmen. And, it doesn't matter if you knew them before the cruise or whatever. Like, everyone at the academy, I think, is so close and connected that, you can make friends with anybody. So it's really awesome, the opportunities that you can have outside of football here and all the cool things you get to do.
Yeah, the Mount Whitney is a command ship, correct?
Yes, sir.
What was it like interacting with enlisted folks? I know back when I was in the Navy, when the summer cruises happened, you guys are sort of in a in-between area between, you don't really have any authority, but you're also kind of learning, kind of shadowing the officers. What was your experiences like with the enlisted types?
Yeah, I think with our cruise, we spend a lot of time with the enlisted just to understand what their roles are and what they do on a day-to-day basis, because sometimes, as an officer, you may not even understand what they're doing. And so I think it was huge for us, and it really opened my eyes to all the work that they do and what goes into, running a cohesive unit on a ship, from the enlisted standpoint. And so I thought it was great getting to know them and just talking to them and seeing sort of what makes them, tick and function. And so I think it really opens us up to, the idea of going onto a ship and just how to interact with, those people when you get into an opportunity to lead them once you're in the fleet.
Did you get assigned to a certain division or on the ship? Like
I did, yeah. I was with the ITs on the ship.
And what was that experience like?
It was fun. I got to learn how to, crimp some wires and reroute some things, and so it was pretty cool.
You're majoring in operations research. Tell me about that major and what have you learned from it?
Yeah, it's been great. I came in not really knowing what I wanted to major in, and the academy does a great job of sort of opening you up to all the opportunities and all the different majors. And so I sort of fell in love with operations research. I'm a math guy, so it's a lot of math, a lot of programming. I sort of wanted to challenge myself with the programming aspect, something I wasn't really used to. And so, it's been really, really great. Honestly, so far, I've met a lot of really great people within the major, whether they're instructors or other students. And so I'm honestly having a great time with it right now.
What are your plans after graduating the academy? Are you going to go surface, sub, air?
I'm still uncertain. I think my top choice would be pilot, but we're still figuring that out.
What excites you about the possibility of being a pilot?
I think just the culture that they have and the excitement. Obviously, people would say Top Gun. That's a great movie, but I think the culture of the pilots is really great, and just the ability to sort of build a cohesive team. Whether I don't think anyone has egos too big within the team. I know sometimes it can seem like that, like in those movies, Top Gun and such. But from the people I've met, I think they work really well and didn't have too big of egos.
I read your nickname is Balake. How'd you get that one?
Balake. Yeah.
Oh, Balake. Sorry about the pronunciation.
Yeah, it's weird to spell it, but there was a Key and Peele sketch a long, long time ago where, the teacher was mispronouncing some names. And so that video went pretty viral.
Yeah, I remember.
And so Blake was in that one. And so Coach Jasper, our quarterback coach, he calls me Balake every day, basically. And
That's amazing.
Everyone calls me that. I don't really have a nickname, but if it was one, that's what people call me.
So pronounce that again for me.
Balake.
Balake. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
For those listening, that's Balakay. Balake. Well, not every football player has a nickname quite like that. A one word nickname. I read somewhere that you said that you once had a small toy stuck up your nose for 7 years and never told anybody. Is that true? I want to know all about that story.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's 100% true. When I was 7, I believe, I was messing around and accidentally got, this little toy. It was about the size of an eraser, on a pencil, stuck up my nose. And, maybe in the moment it freaked out, but then didn't tell my parents. So 7 years had gone by, didn't really ever think about it. Thought it was gone at that point. Maybe it passed through, somehow came out. And then, I was messing around with my older sister and she punched me in the face, funny enough. And then the next day I was messing around and then I, felt something, like I had to, cough and get something out of my nose. And so then I did. And then I felt something like a rock in my mouth and then I had to spit it out. And then I looked at it and it was the toy from 7 years ago.
Oh my God.
So my mom was sort of upset with me that I didn't tell her, but
where was it lodged? Was it like behind your nasal cavity or what?
It was basically right in like the nasal canal, right in the middle, just stuck right there. So they were worried that they think, it was blocking my airways a little bit. So maybe
Wow.
wasn't getting enough oxygen from age 7 to age 14, but
Must have been
it's all right now.
Must have felt great once you had it out.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt like 7 years of like smells like entering my nose at once.
They say that, if you'd swallow gum, it stays in your system for 7 years. I didn't know this about a toy eraser.
Yeah, exactly.
Navy is no stranger to the Heisman Trophy, with the late Joe Bellino winning in 1960, Roger Staubach winning in 1963. Staubach, of course, was the last Service Academy winner. What's it like to be part of such a storied tradition, not only with Navy, but with all the service academies?
Yeah, I think it's being even in the same sentence as Joe Bellino or Roger Staubach, it would be amazing. And so I think just the tradition of the academies and what they sort of stand for and how long they've, been around, and all they represent more than just a school. They represent, the armed forces and the military in general, and sort of just America, I think. And so to go out each week and you're really playing for everyone, that's gone before you, in the Navy, at the Naval Academy, really in any service, and you're playing for them each week. And so to be a part of a brotherhood and tradition like that, it's one of a kind.
When you decided to come to Navy, did you go back and look at the history and just to see what you were a part of?
Yeah, I'm a big football stat guy. So once I finally committed, I was real big into, watching all this stuff and going back and, obviously I knew a lot about Roger Staubach already, and Malcolm Perry and Keenan Reynolds and all those guys who are all-time greats here. And so I think just, I sort of became obsessed with just like looking up all the stats and figuring out everything. And, it was sort of fun to figure out all of the, maybe some people who I didn't even pay attention to, some great quarterbacks like, Will Worth or Zach Abey and those guys, and, just seeing what they did at their times here.
Yeah, Keenan Reynolds, of course, is the last Navy quarterback to really factor in the Heisman race. He finished 5th his senior year. So that's that's actually a pretty recent tradition that you can kind of work off of.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. I mean, all time, I think, touchdown scorer, if I'm right, 88 touchdowns. So amazing.
You know your stats. Your next game is at home versus Charlotte, one of just 2 remaining home games the rest of the season. 7 of your 12 games overall this season are either at a neutral site or on the road. How much of a challenge is that for you and your team not to be at home that much?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a challenge because, it was weird. We had 3 home games to start the year. And then, like you said, 7 out of the remaining 9 are not going to be at our home stadium. So, it was great to get our first 3 at home, feel comfortable there. But now it's, a lot of moving around and trying to get comfortable in new places and just trying to figure things out on the move is going to be difficult. We're used to our routine of playing at home and everything we can do here and being comfortable. And so I think, we're going to push our limits a little bit and get, comfortable being uncomfortable moving around each week.
Well, Blake Horvath, Navy quarterback, thanks for coming on the official Heisman Trophy podcast. Enjoy your bye week and good luck against Charlotte and the rest of the year.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good one.
Thank you. The Heisman is handed out every December, but the history of the trophy lives year-round at Heisman.com. Home to the most iconic trophy in sports, Heisman.com tells the stories of all 88 of our winners and features news, bios, and statistics on all your favorite Heisman heroes. Heisman.com also highlights our Heisman humanitarians, the many charities supported by the Heisman Trust, and so much more. Make Heisman.com your first stop for all things Heisman. Our next guest won the Heisman in 2002 for USC. He was USC's 5th Heisman Trophy winner, the first quarterback from USC to win the Heisman. He is perhaps the player most responsible for igniting one of the great runs in college football history under Pete Carroll. As a senior, he threw for 3,639 yards with 32 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, and he led USC to its first 11-win season since 1979, as well as its first top 5 finish since then. Truly one of the noblest Trojans of all time. We caught up with him last week as he was driving up the Golden State Freeway in his car, and we're glad to have him on. Carson Palmer, 2002 Heisman Trophy winner out of USC. Welcome to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Where are you living these days?
Living in Orange County, California.
The old stomping grounds, huh?
Yeah, the old stomping grounds. Kids are in school, and got my oldest two are starting high school, and then I've got a seventh grader and a third grader. So I got my hands full.
Wow, it seems amazing that you would have someone starting high school at this point.
Hey, we all get old, don't we?
It doesn't seem possible. So, what year did you retire from the NFL?
My last year, I believe, was 2017. I believe 2018.
Mm-hmm. And what's been your focus since? What have you been working on?
In 2019, I started a small real estate development group with one other partner, and we've really focused on the Pacific Northwest and have a couple properties entitled, a couple projects going right now, and so I spent a lot of time dealing with that, and then also coaching my freshman son's high school, helping out with the high school football team and my third graders flag football team. So my days are busy. My days are full.
I hear you. Do you miss the sport? Are you are you getting involved in football mainly with your kids, mainly because of your kids, or because you just really want to get back to football?
Well, I love the game and always have. I don't love all that comes with the NFL and politics and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And just being back in high school and helping out with the freshman team, it's just so pure and fun. And the energy of these kids and the excitement to play and just the opportunity to play in the Trinity League, which is known as one of the best leagues in all of high school football. And it's the competition and the desire for these kids to get better and to be coached and to try to win and build game plans and just all the fun things that come with the purity of the sport.
Yeah.
Not the media, not the, pay for play, NIL, all that stuff. It's really the last frontier that's left to be pure is high school football now that college is involved, salary caps and NIL and all of that. So it's been a lot of fun and really enjoying it.
That's awesome. Let's go back to when you were a kid in that pure environment. What really got you into football in the first place? What drew you in?
I watched it on TV quite a bit, and my dad would always have Monday Night Football on, and I remember Sunday Night Football and just sitting around as a family and eating dinner, in front of the TV in the family room, and I just was drawn to it. I don't know what it was. It helped that I could naturally just flick a football and throw it pretty well. But I was fortunate enough to be around some great coaches that really helped me and showed me all the kind of ins and outs and helped me improve. And I think more than anything, at a young age, I saw myself get better. I saw myself improving. And I think that's so important at these young ages when you're trying to get kids into sports. And when they see that improvement, they see that they're working hard at it and it's paying off. I think those opportunities at a young age can really endear you to a sport and draw you in. I think that's what happened with myself. Speaking
of back then, do you remember like the smells of playing football when you were a kid, like the mouthpiece, the like the mint mouthpieces and the wet grass and just the smell of the rubber with the shoulder pads and all that?
Oh yeah.
Is that something that you remember?
Oh yeah. It's funny you say that too, because on this freshman team, there's a couple other buddies that either have kids that came through the program or have kids in the program, and their dads coaching with these freshman kids. And we were telling stories. We have all these water breaks and these mandatory time in between drills for kids to rest and days off. And they're checking the temperature, and if it's too hot, we have to practice later. And all these protection systems around these kids, and me and some of these other dads that are coaching remember the day when we got one water break. We had a 3-hour practice and we got one water break, and it was just a hose that we turned on over by the old shed, and the water was warm and it tasted like plastic. And now we've got Gatorade bottles everywhere, and like I said, multiple mandatory water breaks. It doesn't smell like it used to, Chris. You don't have double days anymore, so your pads aren't wet and stinky from the morning sweaty practice. You these kids have multiple pairs of cleats and different shoulder pads and different uniform combinations. So, it's just the game has changed. It doesn't feel like I've been gone from the high school game for that long, but just to see the strides the high school football game has made since, my last year in 1998. So almost 25, a little over 25 years ago. The game has progressed, the game has changed, but it's still a great game.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember you in high school, came up through Santa Margarita, and what I remember is after your junior year, you were kind of a local talent considered, so to speak. And then some point, like maybe midway through your senior year, you just kind of blew up. Is that what you remember too?
Yeah, I mean, after my junior year of high school football, I went to the Notre Dame summer camp. I went to the University of Colorado summer camp, and then came back home. And while I was on both of those at both of those camps, I got scholarship offers.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think all the other teams heard that Notre Dame had offered me and Colorado had offered me on site. And so then all of a sudden the tension started to build. And then our senior year, we went out and I had a great year. And we won the whole thing. And then everybody was involved in the recruiting process for me at that standpoint.
Yeah, that was a tremendous year for Southern California football. I believe you had Deshaun Foster down there at Tustin. There was McNair over at Mater Dei,
yeah.
fullback. And you guys had some battles back then.
Yeah, we actually played against Deshaun's team in the CIF championship. And I'll never forget that game. I think Deshaun had like 300 and something yards rushing. He was starting on defense and on offense and was cramping like multiple times per quarter because he was their offense. I mean, he was so hard to get on the ground. He was so explosive. And then he was also roaming the middle of the field at free safety.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily the Santa Margarita Eagles edged out the Tustin Tillers to win a championship. And that Tustin team was loaded. I mean, good friend of mine, Frosty Rucker, was on that team, but multiple guys along with Deshaun that had gone on to Oregon State, other Pac-12 schools. So it was just a loaded team and a lot of fun back today.
And that was just when the whole internet recruiting stuff started to hit, and there was all kinds of expectations heaped on you. Like you said, you had, I think Bob Davie at Notre Dame offering you. You had, was it Rick Neuheisel over Colorado?
Yep.
And of course, Paul Hackett at USC. Maybe John Robinson might have offered you first. I'm not sure.
Yep.
What were these coaches like for 17, 18-year-old kid and kind of fresh faced in the world? How did you regard these older men making their pitch to you?
Well, Coach Robinson, known as J-Rob back in the day, was he was a legend. Growing up in Southern California, and he had multiple Rose Bowl trips and multiple Rose Bowl victories, and had a stint with the Rams, and then came back to SC. So he was just a legend in my eyes. But Neuheisel, man, Colorado wasn't even on the map. And then, Coach Neuheisel started talking to me and started coming to practices and showing up to games and really recruiting me hard. And I got really close to him, and I really didn't want to go to Colorado. I just really wanted to play for Coach Neuheisel. So I grew up wanting to go to Notre Dame because Notre Dame played on TV all the time. Mm-hmm. And then Neuheisel came in the picture, and I really wanted to play in his system. I really liked what he did. I liked the way he handled the team. He had a great energy about him. And then, when it came down to it, SC was down the street, really. I mean, SC was like a 40-minute drive. I could still come home on the weekends and see my mom and dad. My little brother could come and watch me play. And it just logistically made a ton of sense. And also, having the opportunity to help turn around the USC program. Because back then, it'd been struggle. SC didn't have, a national championship prior 2 decades. And everybody in the 70s expected championships at SC and Rose Bowls and national championship type appearances. And so that was enticing as well to stay close to home and hopefully bring some of those glory days back to USC.
And so back then, the two-a-days were down in Irvine, I believe, and it was always super hot down there and very uncomfortable. What was your reaction to being handed that big Paul Hackett playbook your freshman year?
Well, I was overwhelmed. I mean, I had spent the whole summer working with Hugh Jackson, who was the offensive coordinator, and just trying to learn protections. I mean, just protections alone, because it was just a pro style system. It was absolutely a system pulled from, Paul's days with Joe Montana running the Kansas City Chiefs offense.
Mm-hmm.
So we would literally sit around and watch Montana film, which was weird seeing him in a Chiefs uniform. But we were running the exact same system that they were running, which was a lot. I mean, it was a lot for a freshman that was coming in and having to play, but it was a lot for our juniors and seniors. There were so many different schemes within that system, formation adjustments, reads on the fly, post snap changes from a post to a comeback or whatever the on the fly change would be. So it was tough. I mean, we struggled on offense, pretty much every year Paul Hackett was there, and I think it was a good, testing grounds to see if you can run real old school West Coast style offense in college, because it really hadn't been done at that point. Not many people had tried it. There'd been some experimentation, but we tried it, and unfortunately it just didn't work out. And Paul Hackett was gone, and then in came Pete Carroll.
Yeah, they say that the system's great. It just takes 5 years to learn, which is problematic in college. So,
Exactly.
So that first game, Purdue, again, super hot, really hot summer that summer. I think it was 110 degrees in the Coliseum. You come in, Mike Van Raphorst starts out the season. Yeah, you come in. I think Purdue scored, was ahead in the game. Drew Brees in his first start. Great trivia question. You and Drew Brees playing for the first time, significant minutes. You come in, and I think you came in and hit a deep pass. How much of that first start, how much of it was just you kind of treading water, and how much of and just trying to make plays using your natural instincts and athleticism, and how much of it was actually running the plays as called?
Well, I especially my true freshman year, I was just trying to find somebody that was open and get them the ball. Yeah. I mean, I really didn't have any kind of understanding of all the challenges that come with facing a college defense, and the change from pre-snap to post-snap, and all the disguising of coverages and blitzes. And of course, when you're a freshman, the obvious answer for a defensive coordinator is just put a lot of pressure on you and bring a lot of blitzes and try to get you scared and get your feet chattery. And so really my first couple of years, like you said, it took 5 years to really master that system and master that offense. So those first couple of years, I was literally dropping back, trying to make sure I wasn't hot, needed to get rid of the ball, and then just try to find somebody in the same color jersey that was open.
And that was tough because fans didn't really understand that, right? They didn't understand why things weren't working necessarily. They think you just go back and throw the ball. Second season, game 3, I think. I can't remember the Oregon safety's name, Terrell something. You were toward the end of the first half. You were running to your left, and before you could square up to throw, he hit you hard on the right shoulder, and you were out for the season, broken collarbone. In retrospect, was that a blessing because it gave you that extra year?
Yeah, maybe. It's funny because you're right. I think it was the third game at Oregon, and Rashad Bauman is the guy who hit me, who I actually ended up later. He was a teammate of mine in Cincinnati, and we joked around about that play quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I think everything happens for a reason. You may not see it at the time, but it gave me 2 years under Norm Chow and Pete Carroll, and let Pete build that program for an extra season. And that's really when it took off, because Pete's first year, it was kind of still trying to figure it out and get going. And then that second year we took off, and then the third, fourth, fifth, 6 years were obviously amazing years in the Pete Carroll era. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, every opportunity you have to play for a guy like Pete Carroll, you just have to relish in it and absorb it and soak it up. And I feel very fortunate to have played and learned under Pete for 2 seasons.
There's a story that I heard. I wasn't sure if it was true or not, so I'm going to ask you that the first time that you did a little workout with Norm Chow, he said, "I want to see you drop back," and you asked him how many steps do you want me to drop, and he just said to just drop back and throw it. He didn't really care. Is that true?
I don't remember that, but to go from a Paul Hackett system, where that West Coast system, every placement of your feet, literally every cleat that goes in the ground is harped on and coached and coached and coached. And then to go from a West Coast system into, Norm's system that he was running in BYU for all those years, and had so much success in the screen game. And it's just get the ball to the guy that's open.
Mm-hmm.
And he's an ex-offensive lineman. So Coach Chow really didn't care about all the particulars of the fundamentals and the techniques of the quarterback. As long as that ball hit the receiver in the chest, that's all he cared about.
Because those dropbacks, didn't Coach Hackett say that it's supposed to hurt? Your ankles are supposed to be sore by the angle or something like that. Your feet are supposed to be sore. The way
blisters, yeah.
Yeah, blisters, yeah. Okay, so first year with Norm Chow, Pete Carroll, things were kind of, you could see a little bit of things starting to blossom, but not putting it all together. Summer before that 2002 season, one of your tight ends, Scott Huber, came into our office and said, "Man, there's something different about this team. Do you guys feel it?" And I was with my old boss, Tim Tessalone, and we'd heard this. This happens every year, right? Player comes in talking up the team, and you hope they're right, and this time Scott was really right. What was so different about that summer going into that your senior year, and how the team united around the ethos that Pete Carroll, Norm Chow, the whole staff had installed there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was that ethos. A lot of it was just the discipline and the competition that Coach brought to practice every day to bring the best out of everybody. But a big chunk of that was that senior class. That group of guys had been recruited by John Robinson, then played for Paul Hackett, and now they're really third coach. And so just think that hardens you, that toughens you up when you have to go through multiple coaching changes, especially in a city like LA, where everything is just all over the media. It's intense coverage. And then to have that group of leaders, the Troy Polamalu's, Malifo McKenzie, Lenny Vandermeer, Norm Katnick, Eric Torrey. There were so many just influential, positive, good players, but really great people and great leaders and guys that held each other accountable. And then there was young guys underneath us like, Kerry Colbert, who then carried on some of the things that we brought in, that senior class brought in when he was a junior. So I think the combination of Pete and his discipline and his commitment to competing every day in practice, combined with a great group of seniors and great leadership foundation, is really what helped that team take off.
Yeah. Do you remember the first team meeting? It was when Pete came in. I think it was December 2000. He'd just been hired. He called a team meeting, and he went into the meeting room. And I think he played this ESPN video. It was at the time, it was the end of, it was a millennium just happened, and they had this ESPN video of all these great sports moments played to Aerosmith's Dream On. And I was in the room. I was watching it with you guys. And I kind of got chills. But how was it for the rest of the team? Were you guys what was your reaction to first meeting Pete Carroll? What did you guys think of him? And if you didn't get on board right away, how long did it take to get on board?
Well, it's hard because, like I said earlier, in LA, there's so much media coverage. And before we even knew who was going to be hired or who was about to be hired, the papers, the LA Times let you know. And all the negative, it was just all negative.
Yeah.
All the articles, all the talk. He's another Paul Hackett NFL hire. Just, as this 18, 19-year-old kid, you kind of just assume you believe the newspaper. And so we really didn't know what to believe. And then we got through the first couple team meetings and saw how inspirational he was, how positive he was, his love for the game, his attention to detail. So I think, as a new coach comes in and you're affected by the media and affected by the things you're reading and seeing on TV, and then you experience it in real life, all those articles go out the door.
Mm-hmm.
I had a newfound respect for him. Felt like I was getting to know him and understand him. And so, it's a tough place to be in because you naturally read the papers. You naturally see the ESPN ticker. You're naturally around just media's influence. And then to see the total opposite in a meeting room and on the practice field and in offensive and defensive installs, it lets all that stuff go out the window and you just focus on what's in front of you. And You're right. He always had great videos. He always had great lines. Some meetings were long. Some meetings were short. He didn't waste your time. If there was something needed to be said, he delivered the message and delivered. If nothing needed to be said, he didn't fill time with a bunch of words.
Mm-hmm.
So when he spoke and when he talked, guys listened, learned, and absorbed.
Yeah. I still think that 2002 season and that team might have been the most special of all those teams of the Carroll era. Even though you guys on paper maybe didn't have the players that some of those later teams had, Pete Carroll always said that he thought that team just mentally was so tough that they would have beaten any of the other teams he had.
I think so. I mean, I know at the end of the season when Miami was getting ready to play Ohio State, we felt like we could beat both those teams.
Mm-hmm.
And we were playing in the Orange Bowl against Iowa, and we beat them pretty easily.
Yeah.
I would love to have seen us go up against that Ohio State team or that Miami team. So I think it would have been a much better game.
The first game of the season was really interesting game. Battle against Auburn. A lot of new guys starting, and you had a sneak at the end and had a great game. What are you thinking after that first game? You guys are 1-0. Things are clicking on offense, zipping the ball in. What was the attitude like after that game?
I just remember thinking, man, those guys are really good. I can't believe we just beat them. Like, are we really good? And it's funny too, because I then later played with their star on defense was a guy named Carlos Dansby.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a teammate of his. We played in Arizona together and we were joking around about that game. And he was talking about how good we were and how tough we were to defend. And I just remember being like, man, we didn't even know we were very good at that point.
Right.
We were coming off a season and a slow start to Pete Carroll's tenure there. And then we, right out the gates, beat a really talented, as far as NFL is concerned, there was a bunch of NFL guys on that defense and that offense.
Yeah.
And we beat them and didn't even know at that point what was ahead of us or just how good we were.
Yeah. There were a couple, low points early in the season. A loss at Kansas State, who was really good that year. And then I think double or triple overtime, or maybe a single overtime loss up at Washington State with Jason Gesser. And I remember talking to some of the players, and it was just a really low point. I think guys were really down after that Washington State game. You were 3-2 at this point, and it seemed to be one of those situations where, okay, the season could go one of two ways. And of course, we all know which way it went. But as the quarterback, one of the leaders of the team, a lot of pressure on you at that point, and there was lots of people, I think, who were putting a lot of pressure on you. What was, from your perspective, how did you guys dig down and turn things around?
Yeah, we went up, like you said, we went up to Washington State and pulled ahead right at the end and thought we had the game won. Because I think we went up by more than a field goal. Mm-hmm. And I remember just like, the game's over. All we have to do is kick off. I think there was like a handful of seconds left on the clock and they had to go 80 yards.
Yeah. So
we're on the sideline. We're celebrating. And then boom, they hit a post down the middle for the game winner and go 80 yards. And it was just so deflating.
Yeah.
It's one thing to lose a game that you're not sure about, but to lose a game you think you won because there's really not enough time on the clock for them to go down and score. And then they find a way to go down and score and do it and go 80 yards. It's just deflating. It just sucks all the energy out of the room.
Yeah.
All the energy out of you personally. But I don't remember the specifics after that. I just remember how down we were, how shocked. I mean, we were shocked. it was a weird game, weird weather. Wazoo's a weird place to play. It was a night game.
Mm-hmm.
It's rainy and wet, and it was just an odd environment. And to think you have the game won and you're getting ready to go in the locker room, and then boom, the crowd goes nuts and you lost. But Pete got us right back on track. We went right back to work. There was no woe is me, feel sorry for yourself. It was just a lesson learned. And that's what great coaches do.
Mm-hmm.
When the team just has the air sucked out of the room, great coaches find ways to bounce back and make sure it's not 2 losses in a row. And then we never lost again, and we just took off from there.
Yeah, it was amazing. The next week, you played Cal at the Coliseum, and that was a game I recall. Sultan McCullough had a really good game, and then like you said, from that point on, from Washington on, and that's when you just started going off and kicking everybody's butt. Was it just a matter of you had full command of the offense, you knew exactly what you were doing, what was expected of you, and you were just feeling it, like you were just confident? Because you were just going on a tear, like you're unstoppable.
Well, I think that Washington State game kind of opened my eyes, because Washington State, believe it or not, was really good that year. They had a bunch of really good players. They were coached by Mike Price, who ended up leaving and going to Alabama. And Jason Gesser was a phenomenal college quarterback. And every time we scored, they scored. And then we'd score and they'd score. And I remember at a point in that game, I just kind of felt like, I'll get us in the end zone. I'll get us in the end zone. And then we did it to go up at the end. And then I just kind of felt like we were rocking and rolling. Guys were confident in the system. At that point, Mike Williams was a true freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And he made what was supposed to be the game-winning touchdown catch. And I think that gave him a ton of confidence. And I think he realized, I can dominate even as a true freshman, because he was dominant in that game. And they had a bunch of really good guys in the back end too. So I just think that game, even though it was a loss against a good team, it gave us the confidence that we were as good as anybody we were going to play. And it didn't matter who we played, we could beat them.
And then a couple weeks later, or a week later, after Washington, you guys were up at Oregon, and this was really the game where, on a national level, you became the Heisman candidate that everyone was looking at. Right? It was after that game that Pete Carroll came down to my office and said, "We got to start doing something for our guy." And so we started pushing you for the Heisman. I imagine at the time that you were like, "Oh man, great! And just more pressure, more media stuff." What were you thinking at the time when you found out what we were pushing you for?
I didn't even realize that was happening. I didn't know that meeting happened. I didn't notice an uptick in media requests. I think I was oblivious to it. I was so focused on Cal and then whoever we were playing next, that you guys did a good job keeping that from me, because I didn't know you were really pushing from that point on. I mean, I noticed it as we got, we beat Notre Dame, and then, we were rocking and rolling there at the end, but I didn't realize it was after that Oregon game, and didn't notice the uptick in media appearances for myself.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't realize going into Notre Dame that, hey, if I have a big game tonight, then this could be what's in store for me?
I knew it at that point, but if you're talking after that Washington State Oregon span, that was middle of the season, so I was just focused. I was just, who's next? Let's get past them, and then who's next? But I knew it, because I think Notre Dame was like the second to last game, or maybe
it was the last game of the regular season. Yeah. The last game of the regular season.
Yeah, no, I knew it at that point. It was impossible to not know it at that point. But at the midway point, I think it was really that Notre Dame game that I was like, all right, this is for real. This can happen. Let's go handle business.
Mm-hmm. And it was a very tough Heisman field that year. You had the two Miami guys, Dorsey and McGahee, Brad Banks out of Iowa, who you later played against in the Orange Bowl, and then Larry Johnson at Penn State was running for 2,000 yards. So, pretty strong field. But before that Notre Dame game, there was the UCLA game, and probably the most outstanding play, or at least the play that a lot of people remember from that year, is the flip you did at the end zone. LA Times made a thing about it. What do you remember about that play?
I remember coming off on the sideline and Pete Carroll chewing me out to step out of bounds and not dive over people and get flipped up in the air. So that's what I remember about that. I came to the sideline, I was all excited, and Pete just laid into me, yelling at me to get out of bounds, protect myself.
Mm-hmm.
And he was right, but unfortunately, sometimes those things happen.
I always thought there was something very unique about your career trajectory because, look, you're from a skill set perspective, 6'5", 6'6", incredible arm. You're athletic. You can run. You have all the measurables of what you eventually were, which was the first overall pick. But because of the circumstances of your career, being thrown into the fire early, playing under different offensive coordinators and different systems, kind of rare for someone in his fifth year now to go number one overall. Because usually at that point, if they have that physical tools, they usually get a chance to show it earlier and leave after their redshirt sophomore year. You were coming off a rough 4 years, right? And so, did you think this was all something that was possible and could be laid out before you if you did everything that you needed to do?
I was hoping, but I don't think you ever really think it's possible until you achieve it. I mean, I was hoping and wanting and working towards it, but I mean, to know that you're going to be the number one pick and the Heisman Trophy winner, I don't think anybody really truly believes that. You hope it and you want it, and it's a goal. But until you achieve something like that, I don't know that you really think it's attainable.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe different. Maybe somebody else's situation that's been in that, which is rare. Really felt it or really knew it was in front of them. But I was so young. I wasn't ready to go pro any year earlier than when I did.
Mm-hmm.
I had so much maturing to do and so many things to learn. Like I said a bit ago, I just think everything's meant to happen. Everything happens for a reason. And it took me 5 years to be mentally ready
Mm-hmm.
and probably physically ready too.
I remember talking to your dad at practice. I think it might have been after Notre Dame, and he thanked me for the efforts, and he said, "You're doing a great job. He's not going to win, but I just want to thank you for for doing all this stuff." Was that kind of just your attitude going in? Like you didn't want to think about winning because you'd rather be surprised and not disappointed?
No, I just didn't think I didn't think I would win. I mean, that back in the day, there, if you remember, there was this big East Coast bias,
Mm-hmm.
and the Pac-12 didn't really exist almost in a lot of people's imaginations.
Yeah.
From the central part of the country over, and there was such an East Coast bias. There were so many years where the winner had come from the SEC or the Big Ten or the Big 12,
Mm-hmm.
and so. Again, it's kind of like all the negativity I heard about Pete Carroll. All you heard about as far as the Heisman was concerned is that's not a Pac-12 award. And so I just kind of thought, hey, hopefully I can get to go to New York. I've never been to New York. That'd be fun to go to New York. And all the papers were talking about, Larry Johnson had run for 2,000 yards, which at Penn State was a huge deal. And that was a big hyped up
Mm-hmm.
campaign. And then, Willis McGahee had an unbelievable year on an unbelievable roster, and everybody was talking about Miami. So, I didn't start the year, as a Heisman favorite like Larry Johnson did. And we didn't have, the dominant victories that Miami was putting out and the huge, huge stats early on that Miami was just rolling right over people. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's all we heard, and that's all I heard. So I kind of expected that, the Pac-12 would get shut out again until they called my name.
And so when you're sitting at the ceremony with those guys, you still didn't think you were going to win?
I didn't think I was going to. I wanted to. I mean, when I was sitting there, and you're looking around that room and seeing all the paintings, and you see all the previous Heisman winners up on the stage, and then you realize just how big of a deal this is. Then I really wanted to win, but all the way, throughout the whole ceremony, all I was hearing about was Larry Johnson, 2,000 yards, and Miami was getting ready to play in a national championship, so they had that going for him too. So I just really didn't think, it was going to happen.
And so when they finally called your name, what did it feel like? And What was going through your head?
Oh, just immediate nerves. Because I had prepared to make a speech, but I had just come from, I was flying in from Louisville because I had won the Johnny Unitas Award.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was prepping. I knew I had won that, so I had to have a speech ready for that. And then I kind of had another speech, but I honestly thought it was either Larry or Willis was going to win it. And so all of a sudden they call my name. I was like, oh man, I got to give this speech. Here we go. And so just the nerves, just overcome with nerves and excitement. And I think I got up there and said, my heart feels like it's going to jump out of my chest. That's literally what I felt like. My heart was racing.
Mm-hmm.
You look around the room, you see your family, you see your coaches and your athletic director, and you just realize immediately what it means. And then, all my roommates, we lived at 1013 West 24th Street, which is a house,
Legendary
a
house.
legendary house. Yeah. And so then I get a video. Somebody was videoing all my roommates and buddies and teammates that were at our house watching the ceremony, and there was just a big dog pile in the room going nuts. And then somebody showed me that video right after I got off stage, and I just realized immediately, you don't realize how big it is until you win it, and
Yeah.
until after you win it. I mean, it's a big deal. There's great history, and about the Heisman Brotherhood, and there's only one each year, and all these things. But until your name is called and you go through the speech, the acceptance, you hit the media row and you do all that, and then you start seeing videos of your friends and family and teammates' reactions, then you realize just how big this is.
It's a great proving ground for a young person going through media training, for sure. I remember being very proud of you on that speech because you weren't historically you hadn't been a super eloquent guy in interviews. You'd been pretty straightforward about things, but in that speech, I thought you were pretty eloquent and heartfelt. And even that phrase, the heart beating out of your chest, I've heard multiple guys in years since use that phrase, and they hadn't used it before you used it. I feel like you've kind of set a trend there.
Well, it's just real. It's raw emotion. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'll never forget it. My speech was in my chest pocket, and I remember reaching for my chest pocket and feeling my heart coming through my chest. I mean, it's just,
Wow.
it's just such a surreal moment that you can't be prepared for. I mean, unless you won it the year before and you're going like Archie Griffin back to back, you just don't know. I mean, I remember being at Caleb's. I went to Caleb's, and prior to Caleb winning, everybody knew Caleb was going to win. Caleb knew Caleb was going to win, and then you see his face as soon as they announce his name, and you just cannot prepare yourself for it.
Yeah. Amazing. So now many years have gone by. What's your perspective on the Heisman and its history and your role in that, and especially your role in reviving USC, which is what I think that the Heisman voters really were rewarding you the most, because you took a storied program that had been in the dumps and you brought it back. With all the years now to look back on, what's just your perspective on all that now?
Yeah, I mean, the Heisman's just such a unique fraternity. There's only one like it, and the brotherhood I go to different events and things where I get to see prior Heisman winners, and it's just nothing but love when you see somebody that has been through that and has won that award, and you get to see them somewhere. There's just such a natural connection and such a natural love, and just everybody involved in the Heisman. It's still the same guys, Tim Henning on down. I mean, it's all the same guys that you remember, that host you, whether you win or lose. They take care of you that weekend. They check in on you. I get multiple emails and calls, and sometimes just checking in, sometimes with opportunities or updates on things. But all kinds of different charities that the Heisman Trust has been involved in, and amazing charities, raised tons of money, affected multiple lives in such a positive way. So, I mean, as far as being involved in the Heisman, and that being, something that I am associated with, now to hear it's not, here's, first pick in the draft card. It's here's Heisman Trophy winner Carson Palmer, or playing golf with a buddy. Oh, you won the Heisman. I mean, that is such a synonymous thing with your name once you win it. And it's there forever. You know, it's the old guys, the Calebs of the world, the Jaden Daniels of the world, the young guys. When you watch the Washington Commanders play on TV, they bring it up every time he's going to play on TV. They're going to talk about the Heisman at one point in that broadcast. It will come up. It just does. And so,
Yeah.
the respect of the award nationwide is unlike anything else. And so to be associated with that is probably my fondest memory of college, and something I'll look back on along with a number of other things that I'll just never forget. And just the opportunity to go to USC and, like you said, be a part of the resurgence for all the down years and the tough years that SC fans have had, to be a part of a great one, and to have been on one of those teams that went to the Orange Bowl and won the Orange Bowl and won the Pac-12. Just the recognition you get with that, and the work that you put in with your teammates to achieve that is something that they can't ever take away from me or any of my teammates as well.
Very well said. Carson Palmer, 2002 Heisman Trophy winner out of USC. Thanks so much for coming on our show, and we wish you the best of luck going forward.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Great to catch up.
And that'll do it for this week's show. If you like what you're hearing, please help us out and give us a like, a follow, subscribe, maybe review. And we're also available on all the social media channels, the cool ones and the not so cool ones, YouTube, TikTok, all the places. Just look us up, and we'll see you next week. The official Heisman Trophy podcast streams every Wednesday during the college football season and is hosted, co-produced, edited, and engineered by Chris Houston. Paul Goldberg is the executive producer and editor. Special shout out to Isaac Lowenkron, and big thanks to the Heisman Trophy Trust and its executive director Rob Whalen and associate director Tim Henning. The official Heisman Trophy podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find clips of our show on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Just go to @Heisman Trophy.